Yeah, I do not think you have the human right to go to TwitchCon. That's a hot take, I know.
Damn,
No,
Wick, are
I
you gonna
don't
say
have
no?
the right to.
No. This is such
Listen,
this is such a bullshit reframing of what other people are saying. We're not saying that you have a human right to go to TwitchCon. What we're saying, right, and I'm taking an obviously more radical approach here, nevertheless, or principled, however you want to put it. What we're saying is you don't have a right to interfere in business and people's lives to try and drive up the cost with your fucking central planning and government because you think it would be better if travel was less often and it would be better for the environment.
You don't have the right to pollute the air that I breathe with your poor choices.
Topic 1. In 2018, Congress initiated a review of the size of airline seats. Seats have been shrinking for decades. However, at the same time, prices have been declining with the rise of budget airlines and pricing websites. Shrinking seats have allowed airlines to compensate. With that in mind, should the government set a minimum seat size? Should passengers be prepared to pay more for tickets in this time of inflation? Has the criticism of airlines been unfair? And what if seats shrunk to the point that they are a danger to public safety? Excuse me. Yeah. So this is the thing that people seem to get really passionate about. Actually, is the size of airline seats. They're tiny. And I really want to tackle this. Is that should there be some sort of level of intervention here, or is this pure market forces? Right. I get told by some people here about the power of market forces and on our world and how it makes people behave. Well, I think this is probably a pretty good example. So should we just kind of leave it up to the market? Let's well, we know what some people. Let's start with Wick though.
Sure. So yeah, there has been a noticeable decrease in size. I remember flying on various airlines as a young child versus the trip I took a couple weeks ago to San Diego, right on a flight. There's a substantive difference in the services offered between airlines as well, right? We can look at say Delta versus American Airlines versus Spirit Airlines, right? You see substantive differences to the quality, right? And the price of these airlines. And I don't think that's a bad thing. I think that it's okay, right, for airlines to offer, well, you won't get as many amenities, but it'll be a lot cheaper if you fly with us, right? You don't get the checked baggage, and you don't, if you want all those extras, you have to pay for them. But because we are microtransactioning it out, so to speak, we can offer you a lower base fare. I think that's a good thing. And when it comes to the part of the question where it talks about should the government intervene for a minimum seat size if it starts affecting public safety, obviously there's a line where I would say, okay, yeah, that's you need to at least have your product meet the minimum guidelines to be safe, right? But at the end of the day, when it comes down to it, if someone wants to pay for a smaller seat or pay less and have a smaller seat, that's nothing wrong with that. That's my take.
How much? All right, Scott, please.
So I was recently reviewing a debate on the Soho Forum between economist Gene Epstein and Applebaum, and they were talking about cartels. And Applebaum, the leftist, he made this claim that the United States Airlines are a cartel, and this is part of the problem why they're not as competitive as some of the EU things. And I was really skeptical. I laughed it all off, and I kind of started digging into it. And what I found instead was that he was right. He is right. They are a cartel, and they're able to be a cartel in a way that even though cartels don't economically work, because of regulatory capture. The reason the airlines suck so fucking bad is because they're one of the most subsidized industries in all of America. They get hundreds of millions of dollars every few years in tax cuts from local taxes and from federal taxes. Every time the economy takes a downturn, we saw this when Obama bailed them out. We saw this during COVID, where they got $54 billion under the payroll support program extension part 1, 2, and 3. They got a $7.5 billion loan under 4003B1 under the CARES Act. And if they don't pay just that loan back, then the United States government gets to the Treasury Department gets to own 10% of the stock until they're willing to buy it back from them. Yes, seats are getting smaller, but there's tons of innovation that exists in the market. One of the things that has been proposed is actually increasing the cabin size in terms of height, and then having seats layered on top of each other so that you could have more room and you could cram more people in. The fact of the matter is that people are bitching about a service that looks exactly like fascism. This is how economies work under fascism, is when the corporation and the state work together and they protect each other. It's, that's what economic fascism looks like, using your tax dollars to subsidize and bail out things that are not innovating and not competitive. The fact of the matter is that poor people pay taxes so that middle-class people and rich people can have cheap flights. And even still, they're not successful, like Larry Summers, who is the economic advisor under Obama, right? So it's not some hardcore right-winger, shows that because of all of these bailouts and government subsidies and money, what they do is they have a lot of excess planes and a lot of excess seats, and they don't actually need to worry about being economical or have innovation because the government comes and bails them out over and over and over again. So if you want seats that you can pay for that are cheap, that are cramped, you should have them. You should be able to do that for cheap flights. And if you want, a first class ticket, then you should buy a first class ticket if you want a bunch of legroom. And if you say, hey, you don't have any skin in this game, I'd like to just point out that occasionally I do fly, and I'm 6'5", so fuck all of you because it's really cramped for me.
Thank you so much. Corey, please.
Yeah, so I definitely, I'm going to be a copycat again. There's definitely some sentiments that I echo from Scott in terms of airlines should not be bailed out. And I'll even use a Canadian example of Air Canada. It seems like, based off of my understanding of what took place, Air Canada has sort of been like a floundering Canadian airline for a while, and it's only been able to continue to exist as a result of basically, government bailouts or through taxpayer dollars, which is like a bad thing. It should be allowed to fail. As much as whatever I'm proud of Air Canada, if it can sustain itself, it should be allowed to fail, despite it being Canadian. But regardless, I'm going to go full pro-communism united and say there should be no classes in airlines. All seats should be the same size. There should be no economy. There should be no first class, business class. I don't see any reason why all seats should just be standardized to whatever is the safest. That should also presumably allow the airlines to be profitable. And that's more or less where I stand currently.
It's Slacktoy.
So, a few years ago, before COVID, I flew Spirit Airlines. Okay, for years when I had been going over to Europe, we had all those frequent flyer miles, and we could afford the bougie Delta. It was a brilliant time. But me, when I was paying for the ticket, I didn't buy Delta. No, I bought Spirit Airlines, and I'm not sponsored by them. And I looked them up beforehand, and I realized, well, how they make all their money is they nickel and dime you, right? So you got to put your thing in the little slot. If it's too big, there's a viral video of some guy breaking a skateboard. It's very sad because his skateboard doesn't fit in the little slot. He should have bought a bigger ticket, right? But not me. I wore a week's worth of clothing on that flight. I wore 7 pairs of socks. I wore 7 shirts and 7 pairs of underwear. 1 pair of jeans because I'm sorry. I think people who wash their jeans daily are just, neurotic.
Yeah.
And I was able to get from Chicago to Denver for under $60. Was it comfortable? No, I was sweating my balls off. But was it cheap? Yes, it was incredibly cheap. If I wanted to pay for a bigger seat or more storage, I could have paid for it. But, yeah, it was convenient for me to do that. In the same way that if I got a bunch of money, yeah, it's a market economy. Like having a bunch of money, you can pay for some convenience. You could have a bigger seat and more space. There really is, though, zero reason to force airlines to expand their seat space to make me pay for that space. I was perfectly happy paying under $60 for that seat. If you want more space, you can pay for it. I'm 6'2" and 200 pounds on a good day. There is absolutely no reason why our short kings and our thin queens should have to subsidize the troll bodies of people like me and Scott. The prices of airline tickets have been plummeting since the 40s. And I agree, regulatory capture and subsidies is a major problem with airlines. And get rid of the government out of all these markets. But the solution is obviously not to use the government to force them to have bigger seats. I think forcing planes to become economical with market economics is the only solution to actually continue a robust and long-standing airline.
So this is how you know that unlike Twitter is tougher than I am, right? I flew on Spirit Airlines once, like, 2 ways, going to Las Vegas. Never fucking again. Never again. Those people treat you like you're a motherfucking
Never
animal.
again.
Right?
Never again. Never.
That's the Spirit way.
I'll be an animal for $58. I'm sorry, it was
Yeah,
cheap
that's
as hell.
super cheap.
I'll fly in the cargo.
I understand. If my mother is on the other side of the country, right, dying, and all I can afford is a Spirit Airline ticket, I'm sorry, Mom. I will FaceTime, but I'm not doing it again. Thank you so much, friend. Let's go to Sprouticus.
All right. So we already do this, right? So we already do this when it comes to houses. There's a certain level that the house has to meet in order for it to be considered a bedroom. There are certain qualifications. It needs to be so big of a room. It needs to have so many outlets. It needs to have so much of this and so much of that. Well, anyways, we can easily do this with airplanes. So in order to call it a seat, right, it has to have this much space. But you can call this spot over here, you can call it a spot, you can call it a sitting place, you can call it whatever the fuck you want. You can call it a stool if you want to, okay? But it's not a seat. A seat meets these requirements. The stool back there does not meet those requirements. If you want to pay less for the stool, you can pay less for the stool. But the seat itself, that is a seat per the requirements that are provided. And so, yes, I think that that's the way the government should go. I think it's the way the airplanes should go. So people can purchase stools if they want to be cheap. And if you want a seat, you're getting that much space.
Airline stools.
Sounds safe. Super safe.
Don't think they won't. Don't think they fucking won't. Don't put them past them. Let's go to our friend DB, please.
Yeah, I don't know. To me, this seems so. Whenever this comes up, it seems like a non-issue. I think if you can't fit or you're uncomfortable in a seat, get two or find another plane with bigger seats. Like I guess maybe that'll make it inconvenient for some people. Some people won't be able to afford to get to where they want to go. Well, shit, they got to lose weight. Like I don't know what to say. Like it seems pretty straightforward to me.
Okay, hold on. I do have one question before we go into regular. What about like losing height? Like our friend Scott, pointed out he's 6'5", right? Like
He's 6'5". Okay, so first off, 6'5" is too tall. Okay, I'm 6'4", the perfect height objectively. And it's an issue in like certain cars, but most of the time you get by.
6'2" is perfect.
6'2" is fucking.
If I had to pick my height as a dude, I would pick 6'2".
Wait, I'm 6'1". I'm 6'1". How tall are you, Corey?
I am 5'4" on a good day.
How tall are you, Wick?
5'8".
Okay, so it's the 6 feet.
So the more like Libby
people
versus the more like lefty soy people are very short. Is what you're saying.
I
mean, it just happens to be true. We don't need to worry about.
You know what? It's okay. I still slay them left and right. So I'm just playing on hard mode and I'm succeeding. That's all. Right? You need east
and right, left and right and down, just not up because you can't reach. Got it.
Fair enough. Yeah. Right. Like, look, I'm not dating no Amazonian princess. Right. Like that's fine. I'll leave them to you. But like, the 5'4", 5'5", 5'6" ladies.
Look, I feel like what I just said is like akin to like racism. I shouldn't be like mocking you guys for your bad genetics. I apologize.
No, I don't care. Like,
look, I'm comfortable in the Spirit seats, right? Like it gets me benefits, right? Like, no, I can't reach up high, and I think I told this story before where I was trying to reach the grape juice on the highest Walmart aisle, right? I was trying to get it, and I was having to hop to kind of get it, and I accidentally broke it. Like it came down and spilled everywhere. It was crazy. But
I'm gonna be real with you, as someone that is like awkwardly tall, like someone that has hit my head on ceiling fans before, like as someone that tall, I usually, if I do have to fly, I usually get there early and I try and be as nice as possible and go to the person like behind the counter and be like, look, if there's one open, I am very willing in the event of an emergency to sit next to to sit next to the seat that is by the emergency exit, because otherwise my feet are going to be in the aisle the entire time. It's just gonna happen. Like, there's no way that my feet aren't going to be in the aisle.
I thought you were going to say, I'm very willing to suck your dick. Get more space.
Yeah,
You need like
why was
master,
that
right?
the
So,
first
so
thing?
one foot's in the seat, but like you're like twisted sideways with the other leg sticking out entirely into the aisle. That's what you have to do.
Yeah, I mean, I always sit at an angle with like because like my knees are in the back of whoever's in front of me. Like it's unavoidable that like they're pressed into that person's back unless I'm at an angle and like my feet are out in the aisle.
But yeah,
or unless I'm in like an emergency exit.
Shit about a stool.
So
should have got a stool.
Doobie though, like he can't shrink, right? You know, not his
Well, no, he can.
bones.
I wouldn't advise it, but he can.
I guess.
Well,
he
no,
can,
yeah,
right?
but he can buy like a business class or first class seat where they have more leg room. Right? That's what you have to do to be comfortable.
I mean, the thing is if you get rid of business class, or you try and like force a certain like standard, all that you're going to end up with is more expensive plane tickets.
Yeah,
and
you're gonna price
slightly
people out.
larger seats.
I think that's a good
That's
thing.
stupid.
I think travel should be. I think this glorification of travel is like actually
What?
stupid.
Whoa!
The environment, global warming, right?
Yes, absolutely.
I knew it.
It's a
What
contributor
the
to
ability-
2.5 to 3.5% of greenhouse gas
Corey is
emissions.
one of these people that Alex Jones warned us about. He wants us to live like in a fucking hive city on top of each other.
The ability
That's
to not
exactly
to
exactly
travel.
what I
problem
said.
with poverty. Like the more expensive it is to travel from one part of your nation to another part of your nation, the more you incentivize poverty and the more you incentivize issues with housing. Because if people are able to cheaply travel from one section of the country to the other quickly and easily, then what it means is that when job opportunities in new areas open up, poor people are able to move to those areas. If you start making it more and more expensive for people to move, you also make it more and more expensive for people to leave bad neighborhoods, poor neighborhoods, etc. My
which is
problem
why-
is
Airplanes are not the only way to travel. I believe there's
But
like
that is why-
trains
but
and
that-
railways.
You could bicycle. That's healthy.
That
Yeah,
is-
you
but
can walk
no
too.
greenhouse gas emissions.
But that is
bicycle
why
to California.
airplanes. That is why airplanes should have stools, right?
No.
So that way, if
No,
you
no,
want to
no. Okay.
cheaply
You need
get
a-
across
so-
the country,
so
you buy
Sprout
yourself a stool, all right,
It's
and
not
you sit
safe.
in the
I'm gonna
back
be
of
real.
the airplane.
Sprout-
I'm gonna be real.
You will
That's not
die.
safe.
I'm talking
Like,
about
you'll get-
safety.
you'll
Holy
Can I-
hit your head.
Can I ask you a
turbulence will
question?
kill
A
you.
bunch of stools.
and to you and Lactoid as well. So if airlines like started renting out like literal like wing space, you can strap yourself to the wing, just wear some goggles. Like, would you
Yeah.
be like?
like Afghani style, like when they're flying out of the fucking
Yeah.
yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Look,
Okay.
if you want to voluntarily
they should pay you to
risk
do that.
of your life
They
that
should
you
pay
want,
you to do that.
you can do that, but you need to be informed of the dangers of whatever it is that you're doing.
Yeah.
Right. And so if they act like it's safe, if they make seats right that are so small that it leads to like head and neck injuries every time there's turbulence, or like people are hurting themselves because they're so cramped, right? And then they sell it as, they don't warn you about that risk in any way, shape, or form, right? Then you should and can sue them for the fact that they designed their seats in such a way that it leads to injuries that you were not aware of, right? And you experience those injuries and demand that restitution.
So
There's no need to have the government step in here.
Well, so how are you going to like collect that? Like, I don't think we have enough data about like airline seats and design. Like, that course correction will only happen until like people start having like neck and back problems due to like increased flight.
This is called the economic calculation problem, where evil pieces of shit like you want the government to try and discover what those problems are through research and data, and like try and figure out exactly what the perfect situation should be. And what this is called is bureaucracy, red tape, and issues dealing with the economic calculation problem. The way that you find that data and information out is that you allow the market to make seats that suck, and then they get sued by people that choose to do those things. And it is a more accurate, better, efficacious way of discovering that data.
No,
you can't.
That's just called science and quantitative analysis. As in, like, yeah, I take
No,
your
it's
point.
not. It's called central planning.
You are
It's called being
probably
a socialist piece of shit.
willing to sacrifice X
People
number
like
of
you
people. that
No,
that
you're
will have
willing to steal money in the name of saying that this is okay. We'll figure it out with the science.
no. I'm
And
not,
when you try and use science to justify central economic planning, they have a name for that. It's called Lysenkoism, and a lot of fucking people are dead because of it. Fucking stop.
or economics as well. And like, you know,
No, it's not called
I-
economics.
I'm not stealing your money. You can
Yes,
move
you
to
are.
another. You can move to another place, Scott. You're all about mobility and airline. Move to a place where you don't have to pay taxes.
No, he can't move. The airline tickets are too expensive.
No,
because of
no,
your
no.
seat. Because of your seat restrictions, he can't
No.
I have
afford
plenty of
the
fucking
plane
leg room, but
ticket.
I won't be able to afford to fucking move.
You don't have to do it by airline. You can. There are various ways of relocating. And so, like, why
And
not
the
just
same
go to a place?
speed.
There's a reason, though. Let me interject here, okay? I put on my wizard hat, so I'm gonna cast some spells on you motherfuckers right now. Okay, so there's a
The
reason.
ability to move
that
does not get rid of aggression. But continue.
Please let me talk, right? For just a moment, a smidgen, right? A particle of time. The reason why things have largely improved in the last 100 years, right, for the lower classes in America, and if you want to fight me on that, we can, but they absolutely have gotten better overall, is due to ease of travel, right? Ease of relocating, not just for people, but for goods and services. Freight, plane travel has revolutionized how we ship things and things like that. Like, so when we advocate for things like standardization of seat sizes, or this is only going to drive prices up, okay? It's going to make it so I can't make the trips I recently made. I'm a poor motherfucker, okay? And I couldn't have gone to TwitchCon if I had to pay more than I did for the plane ticket. It would have priced me out.
Well,
And
a
I
human
think
rights
that
violation. Not going to
no,
Twitch.
it is definitely, it's not a human rights violation, but it is a standard of
is.
living
It
decrease.
is a human rights violation.
Right?
It's a human rights violation when you steal money from people via taxation, and it's also a human rights violation when you go into a company and you try and use the state and force and violence to tell them how they can and can't use their private property. It is the most fundamental human rights violation. You don't get to tell people what to do with their bodies, and you don't get to tell people what to do with their private property without violating their human rights.
So just go to a stateless area. There are unclaimed lands that you can go to.
If you
Where?
want to
The
travel,
the most unclaimed land in the world right now is Lieberland because
Yeah, I
of a
know.
treaty situation. It's 7 square kilometers of swamp in the middle of Eastern Europe where libertarians are attempting to set a minarchist situation.
Exactly.
Right?
So go.
look, if you want better,
Didn't it get invaded?
you have
I
the
love
option.
I love the communist that says I want to use aggression and violence against my people. I want to force them via government regulation and
I'm not
steal more and
forcing
more
you
of
to
their
do
money.
anything.
But it's okay. I'm not forcing you because you can fucking leave.
When
You can
I'm
move.
going to
You can
hold
move
you to
out of the
this.
country.
Sorry,
I'm
you're
gonna
advocating.
hold you to this every single time a Republican or a conservative party, right? And you get mad when you get your fucking asses kicked and Pierre Palevra takes over your country, and there's conservatives in your country going love it or leave it, and you're like, well, no, we need to talk about why this is wrong. I'm gonna say fucking leave, move. Why don't you just move, bitch?
Wick, did you ever get your
That's
point
fair.
out? I'm not sure.
No,
You interrupted.
apparently
Please.
not. Okay, so
please go ahead.
again, if you don't want, right, like the small seats, you have an option currently to upgrade to have a better experience flying. That is an option that exists. When you advocate for government standardization like this, you are taking away an option that exists for people who don't mind a little inconvenience, or a lot of inconvenience, like lactoid, right?
Yeah, stop taking away my stool.
Yeah, it's options. I'm a big believer in
I
giving
was
people the most amount of options and freedom of choice as reasonably can, right? That's why I said at the start I would not be okay with strapping people in the wings, or obviously minimum safety standards I advocate for. But when it comes to things like smaller seat sizes, having to cramp up a little bit ain't gonna kill you for a 4-hour flight. I'm sorry.
I mean, it might. I don't know. Then you can sue.
Yeah. So Corey, I'm interested. Do you just not agree with the concept of luxury goods, or like, if I'm wealthy, why can I not buy a bigger seat like that where I can really stretch my legs and you know, get the drinks ordered like directly to me so I can get belligerent and like start a fight on the plane.
Yeah, I think there's a total cost, a long-term cost to luxury goods. As in, like I've asked this question on to other people on different like so in the world that we want to strive towards. For example, like Lactoid, do you yourself, considering there's 8 billion people roughly on the planet, do you want everyone to like own a super yacht? Do you think that's like a good move towards? Like everyone just like the entire ocean just filled with super yachts.
I mean, I think there'd be like very pragmatic limitations to that, and very quickly people wouldn't want to get super yachts. But to me, it seems like we're having the opposite problem here: is that first class ticket holders subsidize the tickets for economy, right? Because they're the ones that are paying the higher price, like that outpaces the actual cost of putting them on the plane. So, like if we remove that, like the poor people, it would be like for poor people more expensive for them to fly, right?
Potentially, yeah. Like I will fully admit I have not done the calculation in terms of like what is the exact economic output if every single seat is the exact same size and we eliminate first class, and economy and business class. Like yes, I will bite the bullet that it will probably drive up costs. But at the same time,
for poor people specifically.
Well, yeah, well for everyone, sure.
Well, not for first class ticket holders, right? Because they were the ones that were
they'd be getting a cheaper seat.
They'd be getting a cheaper seat.
Yeah, sure. And that's fair. But I'm also like, this is where like it brings in like, well, in terms of like limitations on like the amount of wealth that you can accumulate, et cetera, et cetera. Where that's why it's like I don't think 8 billion people on the planet should be in a position to acquire a super yacht.
I think there was actually somebody famous who actually once said this, where it's like the socialist-minded person sees somebody in a yacht and says, you know, nobody should have that, and like a liberty-minded person sees somebody in a yacht and says everybody should have that, right? I think that's like a classic saying. You know, as I don't think there's like I don't take it as an insult to hope that one day everybody gets to live in luxury. In fact, a lot of like necessities that we take now for like granted used to be luxuries. Toilets used to be luxuries. Cars used to be luxuries. Airline fucking tickets used to be luxuries. Like rich people would get dressed up on
phones,
internet,
phones, like all this shit. And what happens is like over time, like, you know, the research on this and the people paying those exorbitant prices are subsidizing that technology to become within reach of all of the rest of us poor schmucks. Okay, it is a beautiful thing.
And there's an unforeseen cost, and I have no problem saying that if you value luxury, or rather excess luxury, without getting it. Well, we can have that conversation.
People's lives should be easier or harder in general, Corey? Do you think people should have an easier time of it in life or a harder time of it, like to live?
That's a loaded question.
I understand it is, but you understand why, right? So some of these things that are luxuries, like I want everyone eventually to get a super yacht. Now there are again, as Lactoid pointed out, problems that arise because of that. But
no, it's okay. We'll colonize space, and then there will be enough ocean for us all to have a
right.
super
Like
yacht.
at a certain
market
point,
solutions.
We want, right? We want to spread the good. And this is a problem I have with a lot of extreme leftists, right? They don't want to bring people up to the standard. They want to take away the privilege of those they feel that are privileged. Okay. And I think that's the opposite of what we need to do. We need to I want to give my white privilege to everyone. I don't want to take it away from me, right? I want to spread it, right? I don't want to have it taken away.
Wait, did you say you want to give your wife privilege to
white privilege?
White.
That might include a wife. I don't know.
We did talk about incels, like, you know, I want everyone to have look, I want everyone to be able to be in a committed, happy relationship. I think that's a thing that everyone should have access to. Yes.
But in a committed, happy relationship, your wife wouldn't have privilege to everyone.
Okay, so
I mean, depending on how relationships change over time.
I like Corey. I want to hear from Doobie too. I want to hear what Doobie.
Yeah, actually, I think what Corey is saying is actually pretty reasonable, though I disagree in this specific case. So, for example, right? So if everybody wanted to like roll coal, right, which is where you like modify the diesel engine in your truck and fucking have like huge black plumes of like exhaust coming out of it. Yeah, I guess people could want to do that, but if we allowed everybody to do this, or even like a handful of people to do this, it could make life pretty fucked up for the people in the community, right? So we should probably say, hey, you shouldn't do this, right? We're going to put limitations on this because it's going to hurt the community, it's going to hurt the environment. I think you could make the same argument toward the airline seats. Yeah, it's people want the luxury,
That's not what
sure,
happened.
but overall, people traveling more often, having the ability to travel more often because flight prices are lower, is actually going to hurt the environment, hurt everybody long term. So we should put a limitation on this, and actually it being more expensive and to the point where it's like discouraging travel in this way is a good thing.
And
What
so
you're
I'll,
actually talking about is you're talking about marginal social cost not being calculated in the price demand equation, right? So rolling coal or the flying planes everywhere is doing some form of environmental damage, and you're not able to actually prove that the environmental damage has a first order consequence that can be measured against an individual, right? So if I live next to a factory and it's pluming shit, I can sue the factory for poisoning my water. I can sue the factory for like the smog of my unable to breathe air. I can sue them for like damaging my clothes. But if I live on the other side of the world, can I really sue the factory for their percentage of carbon emissions into the environment that causes like climate change that may or may not cause a hurricane in 10 years, right? Like it's an impossible thing to litigate. And so the state assumes that this is a market failure in the market and comes in to regulate what they believe is the marginal social cost or the marginal social utility to attempt to get the economy back to everyone's interests. The problem with this is that it doesn't actually get rid of the economic calculation problem, is number one. And number two is that by affording them this monopoly, you get this authoritarian shit that you have happening. That it's not the appropriate way to litigate these things. When you have these large companies, like when you have state institutions in charge of economic central planning, what you get is you get the UK saying, we need to institute laws to reduce our carbon emissions, and doing so from 1997, and then looking at the data presently, and what you find is, yes, they reduce their carbon emissions until you actually attach the carbon emissions to the goods and services. And then you find out what they did is they offshored manufacturing, destroyed a bunch of jobs in their country, had it manufactured in third world countries with lower carbon emission standards, and then used carbon to ship it all the way back to the UK, and they actually increased their carbon emissions. So like when the state is involved in central planning, it's unable to fix these things. If you want to fix these things, what you need to do is you need to get rid of the state's monopoly on the ability to punish companies for doing things like this. As it stands in the United States of America, the Environmental Protection Agency is utilizing your tax dollars to determine when these companies break rules. But with that is afforded a certain legal immunity from individuals being able to sue them on grounds of certain things that they do, such as their emissions. If you live near a company that has all these emissions, you should be able to sue them. They shouldn't have that protection from the state. So like this idea that we're going to standardize airline seats and it's okay because even if it restricts travel because it's going to like restrict carbon emissions, you're talking about layers and layers of economic things that a government can't figure out. And you talk about unintended consequences of the market. The problem is that the unintended consequences of the state are worse. I'm not saying free market capitalism is this beautiful thing that fixes all problems. What I'm saying is that when you start adding central planning to this, you make the problems worse, not better.
Wait, how would an individual even begin to like start the process of suing an airline for the emissions, the carbon emissions around their community? Like, how does that process even start? How do you quantify?
Did you listen to what I said?
Yeah, I did.
Okay, well then you
So-
didn't
so
get
how
what
do
I
you
said.
how do you
I
did.
specifically
You
stated
said,
that
hey,
as an issue.
no, hold on. I understand. You said right now. You said, hey, the EPA is in place, and therefore these individuals can't sue these companies. Okay, so let's assume the EPA is not in place. How does an individual even begin to quantify the cost of this thing to their specific community and to them as an individual, and then go after this airline for that cost?
Again, I don't understand why I would answer a question that I already answered in my statement, which is that is an issue that the state doesn't actually solve this problem.
Well, how would
Now,
you
there,
solve
there are
it? Like, how-
ways. So there, I mean, like number one, I would say that there are ways of when you have marginal social cost and marginal social utility, right? So the marginal cost is that there is some damage to the environment, right? Now, our values are that we want to protect our environment. So what you've created is when you have a free market is that you have a market void for that desire, that value that people have. So this has to be done voluntarily, where people choose, where another company steps in, for example, and is able to test these things and is able to say, look, Spirit Airlines pollutes like a motherfucker and they suck. But Delta, you can pay a premium and they don't do these things. And then you have to sell that value. What you're talking about is, well, wouldn't it be awesome if the government came in, right? And then just said, these are the admission standards that we have to have. And it sounds nice, right? Because you got rid of the pollution that, let's say, Spirit is doing more so than Delta. But the problem is that you increase the costs. And so by increasing the costs, by having the government have to enforce these things that are non-voluntary, you take additional costs out of the economy. And by reducing the amount of economic transactions, by reducing the amount of liberty in the market and of people, you actually affect their ability to have meaningful change in the market, because you reduce the amount of funds that they have. So you also reduce innovation. If we didn't have so much government regulation, it would no longer be a problem, because algae biofuels likely would have been developed by FedEx. We wouldn't be having this conversation.
That's a little bit of a stretch, but I take your point. But I do want to attempt to address your point, Wick, that you brought up in terms of what should society provide to people. And yes, I am of the sentiment that society should provide for the basic needs of all its people. That includes food, shelter or housing, healthcare, education. I think those are
You do not see travel or transportation being a basic need?
So it all depends what you mean by that. There's a lot to unpack there in terms of travel and mobility. Where yes, do I think people should have the freedom to move within their country? And depending on what exactly do you mean by freedom? But do I think people should have
the ability to the ease of transit in between?
Right. So and you brought up your example, you wouldn't be able to go to TwitchCon if you weren't able to buy your ticket. But that's
trains are fairly cheap.
That is exactly what I was going.
Buying a train ticket is fairly cheap.
Yeah, we don't have the infrastructure in place currently, right?
Exactly.
No, you have the infrastructure in case you have the infrastructure in place for trains. You also have the infrastructure in place for bus tickets. There are cheap ways to get across the country. Unfortunately, most of the time, if you're going to choose a cheap way, then it's going to cost you more time. The most time efficient way to get across the country and the most comfortable and most time efficient is going to be the most expensive. The least time efficient and possibly the least comfortable is going to be less expensive. It's going to be cheaper because it's not as sought after as the most comfortable and the most time efficient. So when you take a look at that, you actually see that you do have the position of mobility for cheap. You just don't have the position for the most time efficient, most comfortable movement across the country.
If I were to
cheap.
drive right from where I live, Pennsylvania, to San Diego, California, and to incur all the costs associated with that, not only time, travel expenses with my car, I would argue it would have been more expensive.
It would have. If you would have taken your car, it would have been more expensive. You would take a bus, it would have been less expensive.
But the time would have gone up astronomically, and I'm actually not sure if it would have been remarkably less expensive. A bus ticket, yeah.
We can do a bus ticket from Pennsylvania.
Wait, but I would say that. Sorry to interrupt. If you want to finish your point,
no.
I was going to say that sort of speaks to my point. It seems like you brought your example of going to TwitchCon. Yeah, I don't think you should have the right to go to TwitchCon at a moment's notice whenever you want. Whenever TwitchCon is held, it should be
sure, but I should have
to travel with an airline. It should be
have resources.
It
right?
Should you pay for your flight?
Well, this is the inherent problem of it should become a complicated calculation, because I don't want to have to enforce reducing greenhouse gas emissions as a result of overconsumption of airlines. It's the result of people overvaluing and overglorification of travel, that people are traveling through airlines, that we have to come down and sort of tamp down, saying, hey, this is excess consumption, and this is a problem in the long term. This is just temporal discounting in a nutshell. Of yes, as a result of people largely valuing always, I would say, the wrong things of just travel for the sake of travel.
But your advocacy is not going to solve the problem, and it's only
Wait.
going to hit those people, right? Who, like, do you know the last time I traveled anywhere, right, by plane,
One
was
second.
before the pandemic, right? Like,
How much?
so
How
it's
much?
not-
One second. How much did it cost you to fly to
round trip was
Round
about
trip.
$400.
Okay. Where? Okay. Which airline did you get
Spirit.
it from?
Spirit
Spirit.
Airlines.
Okay. Okay.
About
so you went-
$400.
you
And
went
I
to-
like
you
I
went-
said, I didn't pay for any of the baggage or stuff. I just had it wasn't even a carry-on. It was just a handbag or whatever.
So you flew the cheapest you could possibly go.
Mhm.
A train one way is gonna be $186. Which is cheaper than your flight. And
One way. So when you do, what's that times
Yes,
two? It's
it's
like
still
almost
cheaper than
a
your
little
flight.
yeah, but not
it's still cheaper than your
significantly.
flight, right? Is it still cheaper than your flight?
Yes, in
Okay.
money. How long would have
Okay.
it taken?
Time is money.
A train ticket? Well, I mean,
Yeah,
if
what's
you're
the
also,
what's the
if you're
travel
also
time?
not
It took me about
70 hours is the
70
travel time.
70 hours, right? I did my wow. Yeah, my
Yes, you
my
paid
plane
the
flight
you
was
paid
way
additional
less than
money.
that.
You're correct. You paid additional money for the extra convenience of it was more
Yeah,
time
sure.
efficient.
I suppose technically yes, but when we look at the real world,
Would it have been
calculus
more
here,
comfortable to sit in a bus than it was at Spirit Airlines?
for 70 hours? No.
No, so it's not a straight bus ride. You go from bus to bus. There's breaks. Would it be more comfortable to sit in a bus seat than the seat that you were given at Spirit Airlines?
You're looking for like 20. Look,
I'm
again,
asking a question. Would it be more comfortable to sit on a bus seat?
not for
than
the
to
length
sit-
of time. No, honestly, I could go for a little more discomfort for a less length of time, and overall, that's
Okay,
less
Then
discomfort.
that is your choice,
Okay.
though. That is your choice.
But this is why I'm arguing against Corey, because Corey is asking to take away that choice from me.
He's not saying take
I'm not
away
saying
the
you
choice.
should. It
Yes,
should
he
be a more.
is.
No, I
it
think
should-
I think
No,
what
he
Corey is
literally
saying
he's
is that
just I mean, he's a Lysenkoist. That's
okay,
all
no,
it
I think
is.
what
More.
Corey is saying is that hey, if you want to do this, plan ahead more, right? You could buy the tickets half a year in advance. Right? It would have been cheaper. There's like a discount for buying early. Or even if you were to buy earlier, you couldn't afford it, then hey, you just don't get to go, and that's okay.
Yeah, so that's pretty much my point in a nutshell. So if you go back to my point of like, yes, I'm of the sentiment that society should be providing for like your basic needs, including housing, or rather shelter, and food and healthcare and education. And so if society is providing that, your need for travel should decline. If it's not, that's a problem, or you should probably like then plan ahead, and it becomes a complicated calculation to travel. Like, yeah, I do not think you have the human right to go to TwitchCon. That's a hot take, I know.
No,
Damn, Wick, are you
I
gonna
don't
take
have
one?
the right.
No. This is
but
such a
it's-
yeah. This is such a bullshit reframing of what other people are saying. We're not saying that you have a human right to go to TwitchCon. What we're saying, right, and I'm taking an obviously more radical approach here, nevertheless, or principled, however you want to put it. What we're saying is you don't have a right to interfere in business and people's lives to try and drive up the cost with your fucking central planning and government because you think it would be better if travel was less often and it would be better for the environment.
You don't
and
have the
think
right to
rich
pollute
people
the
have the
air
right
that I
to-
breathe with your poor choices.
It's not our poor choices.
Do you
The
drive
business-
do you drive
You
a car?
don't own the
It does seem
air.
like- it does seem like
I
these are poor
don't
choices,
drive a
though.
car actually for the explicit purpose of reducing my greenhouse
Well,
gas emissions.
Oh, but you live in an
Okay,
urban
cool.
area, though. Come on.
So that
Well-
light you're using in the background, that you'd use to just give it that wonderful bisexual lighting, why don't you cut off that fucking light and stop doing so much damage to the environment? I can see
Yeah.
from the other side you got some light from elsewhere that's not studio lighting, possibly a light in your kitchen. Why do you have the right to have that light on that is most likely using forms of energy that are not green energy?
Yes, this is the argument to futility of like, if you can't be absolutely perfect, then you should take no action whatsoever. I'm just trying to call to the attention of like, yeah, you probably like driving in and
This isn't
of itself
about
in
being perfect. Taking
You're
away
asking-
air
you're
travel
asking for
from
perfection.
Poor people. What you're doing is you're advocating. We don't want poor people to use air travel anymore. That is
not
the
true.
result.
That's
Saying,
not.
hey,
Yeah.
we
That
want
is the
poor
result of
people
what he's
to plan
advocating for.
ahead,
They
to
should
have some
walk like the
discipline
peasants
and
they
take
are.
responsibility for themselves. And if they want to fucking travel somewhere, if they don't have the resources
No,
to do it
no,
easily,
no,
then
that's
they need
not
to
the
fucking
result.
plan ahead. That's
They
cool.
should, they
That's
should,
not
they
the-
should pull
that-
a
so-
rickshaw
so
down all
that's-
the way to the other side of
So
Cumberland.
that's so wait, that's not what
Get on a
Plan
Greyhound.
ahead.
Get on a
wait,
fucking
one
bus.
second, one second.
I'll
One
plan
second. That's
ahead my
not what
mother's funeral
that's
when I
not
need to
what-
get a quick flight.
That's not even what he's arguing for anymore. The argument is now that you shouldn't have a right to fly, essentially because the effects on the climate would be just far too dangerous. Which, by the way, the effects of a bus or train going there at the same time, which Corey seemed okay with, even though cheaper, would send out more emissions.
That's not true.
But we won't talk about that. The 70-hour bus
Yeah,
ride is not going to
bus?
send out more emissions than an airplane.
No, it's not. No, it's not.
I'll look into that. All right,
I
so I will look into that. But the idea that you shouldn't have the ability to fly is absolutely insane. The people, the very people that you look up to, the very people that say yes, we should take away flight. Flew from the United States to Europe to go to the UN and their private
I don't think
jets
Corey did
and
that.
their absolute it's fine, but the very people that
And I don't
the
think
very,
Corey is saying that people don't have the right to fly ever. Like he's just
okay.
saying, hey,
So when
it costs more.
okay, so when do we have the right
That's
to
a
fly?
reasonable sacrifice for the benefits of the environment.
When do we have the right to fly, Corey?
Pardon me, Spartacus. Sorry.
When do we have the right to fly? When can I choose to fly?
Right. So
When
assuming
you
like
can afford it, the same as now. What the fuck?
well, that's fair too. But like, yeah, that's why I'm saying if we implement the standardized seats, not stools, not wing space, seats, and like we get rid of first class, and I like I said, with Lactoid, I'll bite the bullet. That will likely drive up costs, and that's fair. And if it drives up costs, well then yes, it should become a complicated calculation to travel, like and it should be a luxury to travel, and like I would say even most people should not travel. Travel for the sake of travel is just like pretty silly.
What?
So
But it's
what
not.
you're- what
Look,
you're
nobody's
saying-
traveling
what
for the
you're
sake of
saying-
traveling. I wanted it to
Well, some
attend an
people are.
event. Like,
No,
some people
no.
are.
didn't
Like,
travel
a lot
for
of
the
Not
sake
people.
of
you.
traveling.
Like,
No, he wasn't talking just about you. But like,
I
I'm
understand,
talking about
but
you.
and I travel just for the sake of traveling. Okay, some people do. So like,
Wow.
Yeah, but
I'm
at
one
the
of
same
them.
time,
what Corey's
like-
argument actually like
Eco
dig deeper
trader.
into his argument, right? Like Spartacus, he's not saying people don't have the right to fly, right? What he's attempting to sell you is a very eat the bugs kind of Marcusian argument that what we're really talking about is behavioral nudging, right? Which is the psychological science of instituting governmental policies that change people's behaviors by just a little bit of aggression, just a little bit of coercion, so that we can get them to do what we want them to do, but we can boil the water, the frogs
Okay.
in the pot, so that we're
Okay,
not
so-
actually making it illegal to fly. Like what he's really saying is that he does value that as the antinatalist that he is and the Lysenkoist piece of shit that he is. But what he really wants to do is he just wants to put in a little bit of regulation, a little bit of things, and then people will change their behavior in the way that I believe is right, because the science is right on this. And then we just kind of do that over and over and over again till you're all eating your bug burgers. You'll own nothing and you'll be happy. You'll live in your fucking Tokyo style pods. And won't the world be better when we all have our basic needs met, but nobody has any fucking freedom?
Okay, so no,
perfect steel manning.
so I disagree with that. So I disagree with artificially raising the prices of airline tickets. In order to move people positions, in order to for the greater moral good of what you see as moral. No, I also disagree with artificially making someone not able to go to their family's funeral. I disagree with artificially making them not be able to do that. I disagree. No, I just disagree with that. I
But
think
he's not advocating for that.
But he is. But if you're going to make the price
the
higher,
reason,
but
the
if you,
reason
but
they
if,
wouldn't
wait,
be able to go to their family's funeral
one
is because
second,
they're
one
poor.
second.
They did that to themselves.
They
Right?
did that to
So if I don't have the fucking money to pay for something that I need to get some- I made bad choices in my life.
wait. They did this to themselves. So if my
True,
so
actually.
wait 1 second. If my family in say I've got family in California. I don't have family in California, but let's just say I do for the example of this. So I live in Indiana, let's say I've got family in California, and I am not the most, I don't have the most in savings. I don't have the most, but I live basically paycheck to paycheck. I'm trying to pay my bills because I bought a house for myself. I'm trying to do the best I can for myself. I'm trying to make the most of what I have. And so I am living paycheck to paycheck right now, but I'm working on making it better.
You should have let BlackRock Corporation buy it.
I'm working on making it better, right? I'm working on myself. And my mother dies because she got hit by a car in the middle. She was going to get her mail, and some car that was running away from police just absolutely just destroyed my mother. Then it's my fault. It's my fault that I can't go to her funeral. It's my fault that I can't go to her funeral.
Well, Corey doesn't believe in
You
cars,
should
so that
have
won't be an
used
issue,
like
right?
a serial killer
No, they
murdered
exist,
her while she was
Lactoid.
protecting like kittens and 2 babies or some shit. But yeah, in this scenario they just laid out, buy less wall decorations,
Just
have some fucking money in savings. Save your money.
I bought wall decorations.
Don't buy dumb shit.
I said I bought a house.
You should
to work on
have
myself.
you should have money in savings. If you don't, then hey, you fucked up. If you don't got to go to her funeral, that's your fuck up. Get your family to lend you some money.
And and also like I would add in like I also advocate for a universal basic income, and like depending on your definition of like poverty, like I would like if you're identifying yourself as in a position of poverty, Spartacus, then you're not living in the society that I want to move towards. As in like
I'm not saying I'm in a position of poverty. I'm saying I'm doing the best I can with what I have. I bought myself a house. That way I don't have to work off rent. That way I start getting equity. I'm trying to move myself up in life. And in the process of moving myself up in life, when it's kind of the harder parts, because I can guarantee you Mark Zuckerberg went through a hard part in life when he's trying to work on Facebook and struggled. And I can guarantee you most successful people that came from non-successful family had a point in time when they were struggling hardcore because they were trying to put all their money into this project that was eventually obviously going to become a huge success, right? These people had a very hard time, and you're telling them that if your mom dies during that situation, you should go fuck off because that was your problem, and you know what? You are the reason you're not going to be able to attend your mom's funeral.
Yeah,
No,
we're saying
now I need to pay for
plan
therapy
ahead
too.
So that
now I need to pay for therapy too. So when my dad dies, I can't go to his funeral either because I'm paying for therapy because it's my fault I couldn't go to my mom's funeral.
That's cool. No, actually, I think you should have like universal health care. You should access to therapy for free. Okay, I would give that to you for free. Go for it. But that being said, I think that you should start selling some shit to have at least $1,000 in savings, and then you get to be comfortable, right? So don't, this like sob story, but how you're grinding, you're struggling, etc. So everybody goes through that, right? It's who cares, right? Just being a fucking adult, have some money in savings. If you don't, get some, right? Like
okay,
eat
wait,
today, eat cheaper food.
No.
It's not that difficult.
Bullshit. This is bullshit because the original argument, right, was from Corey was the idea of having first class is wrong not because rich people have some level of excess, right? The idea was we could be more economical about this. Lactoid brings up the fact that if you get rid of first class, you get rid of the subsidies for cheaper flights. The way that airlines are able to make it more accessible for people to have cheap flights is that they sell luxury to a certain percentage of people. That includes legroom, but it includes better meals, better drinks, better service, etc. And they're able to use some of the profits from that portion of the flight in order to subsidize so that they can get more people to pack into a plane, and that way you get a cheaper flight. Then Corey shifts his form of argumentation to be like, well, if less people are flying anyways, I don't care about the consequences of government planning making it more expensive to have a flight because it's good that less people are flying because there's an overemphasis on unnecessary travel. And what I am attacking, and what a lot of people here are attacking, is that when you're engaged in behavioral nudging and trying to take over the market economy, you've already admitted that there are unintended consequences of which you're not aware of, which sparked the whole fucking pivot you're having now, which is that it would make flights more expensive. But then you justify it based off of another higher order value of environmentalism. And so what I'm saying is that this type of behavior where you justify state action on people and on their private property based off of your moral system or whatever subjective analysis of the science that seems to support what you believe at the time, you then get to justify fucking anything. And once you go down that rabbit hole, that's when people end up in gulags. That's when people end up in mass graves. That's when people starve. Because in this conversation, you talked about tons of different market incentives that you would add. Oh, well, I'm for UBI. I'm for giving housing to everyone. I'm for translation in economics, getting rid of every single financial incentive that actually allows the market and the system of profit to be able to have a market economy that works. And before you know it, everyone will fucking be poor. Everyone will be fucking broke, and no one will be able to afford a fucking flight.
Yes, as usual, perfect steel manning.
Corey, can I ask you a question?
You've had
absolutely.
plenty of opportunity to make your argument well. I don't need to fucking steel man and be charitable here. I can talk about the ways that your ideas lead and degenerate once you take those principles and make them a moral norm of your society. And once you go further down the game theory aspect of it, where this evil fucking ends up. We've seen it before, and I'm not going to just casually and laugh about it now.
So wait, hold on. So
wait,
who else here
let me ask
is
a quick
totally
question.
against behavioral nudging?
Real quick, I just want to ask.
Go ahead.
I wanted to ask Corey a quick question. So there's some studies that like some fast food restaurants, I think McDonald's like gotten kind of in hot water for this. They intentionally design their benches to be uncomfortable because they want people to like to not stay there, right? They want to grab their food, get the fuck out, right? And you can't just tell that to people because then they'll get offended, feelings and all that bullshit. So you make the benches like really
Objection, no feelings.
Right. But like so wouldn't you, Corey, if you want to discourage people from flying, wouldn't you want to make the seats as cramped and uncomfortable as humanly possible? Because then very few people are going to want to fly.
So if you're sort of like sort of altering my argument and like instead of standardized seats, sort of like enforce like uncomfortable seats,
incredibly just like torture seats, and then like nobody's gonna want to fly, and then we save the planet.
Yeah, sure. If that disincentivizes,
okay, right. Sure.
Or like if it gets to the point of like actually just get rid of like any.
Just get rid of planes. Just get rid of planes.
No. It's just it's all wing space. You gotta just strap yourself to the wings. No inside the plane. Just strap.
Yeah.
And
so Doobie, you can go ahead and.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if anybody else here is absolutely against behavioral nudging.
What do you mean by behavioral nudging? I don't know.
So there's a really famous example of this, where I think it was like an airport in Europe somewhere where they had an issue with men peeing on the floor around the urinals, right? As you do, right?
Right?
Yeah. So what they did, right, is they put a bullseye in the urinal, right? So that men had something to aim for, right? And this has actually reduced how many guys were peeing all over the fucking floor. Things like that, like smaller plates at restaurants and stuff, like Blackboy just said that uncomfortable chairs at McDonald's, things like this.
Homeless spikes, right?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Homeless spikes. You're trying to encourage a certain behavior or discourage a certain behavior, so you do little things to nudge people in that direction. Right? So they ultimately make the choice themselves, quote unquote, but you've nudged them along the way to get there.
And I think there's some real other real world examples of like just take something as simple or whatever trivial as like chewing gum. Like I think it was like Singapore or some other country like outlawed pretty much you can't chew gum or like you can't buy gum because like the people it turns out can't be trusted to like not stick their gum under every surface available.
That's not why Singapore did it. It's a bad example.
Sure, but
the reason Singapore outlawed gum is because there's a large cultural tradition of prostitutes chewing gum loudly to signal to Johns that they're open for business. And so like there's like people in Singapore find gum to be like way more disgusting. And so it's outlawed as like a means of cracking down on the culture of like prostitution.
Which is anti-sex work, right? Which we're all obviously like very troubled by.
I'm just saying it's. I mean, it's fine. Like, continue. I'm sorry. I'm just like I had to interject that that's not really the reason why they did that, but there's tons of examples. It doesn't necessarily weaken your point.
And well, even if it was that was the case, which I'll totally take your word for it, Scott. Of like where it's also like interesting, where it's like from my understanding, it could be wrong. Like Singapore is like one of the more economically free societies, and yet like you can't chew gum. Like is that fascism? Is that communism? Lactoid? But yeah, it turns out like I think some societies can agree that like turns out if you can value the wrong things, and maybe chewing gum isn't the highest value to value.
That is communist, right? That policy. The rest of it might not be, but that, yeah, for sure.
That specific
Yeah,
okay.
I mean, Singapore is incredibly free market capitalist, but Singapore is weird because it's a combination of like social fascism and like economic libertarianism. So like in Singapore, for example, they don't have a social safety net. What they have is a legal requirement that all wages go into a pension fund that's like 20% of what you make, and you can use that pension fund to like buy health insurance or like some basic housing needs, but like legally you're required to do that. But unlike America, where social security is a Ponzi scheme and they just like take that money and they totally don't spend it on other things, while we're massively in debt, they actually hold that money in trust. And so they're extremely free market. But at the same time, Singapore is also a place where you go to jail for like 10 years for petty theft and they like beat the living shit out of you. Right. So like they're incredibly free market while having incredibly draconian laws. I don't know. It's probably like Doobie's like fucking most like wonderful place in the world to live because they will fuck you up.
Yeah, just don't do
like,
bad shit.
Small
Like,
shit.
okay.
But at the same time, it's
Like
extremely
chew gum.
economically libertarian.
Wait, okay.
And
but
10 years
I
for
was-
chewing gum.
I was
for
trying
sure.
to think of an example where, where the government was doing something like this, and I'm sure there's a lot, but I blanked on it, so I googled something really quickly. So an example of government nudging, right, is the opt-out or organ donor thing, right? So when you go to get a license, they found that if people were opting in to donate organs, that far fewer people doing this. They need the organs, so they made it an opt-out system. So you're automatically enrolled, and you need to opt out. And they found that like only 18% of people actually went through the trouble of removing themselves. So this is like behavioral nudging from the state to get a certain
No.
behavior to happen.
You shouldn't be automatically opted in to giving up your own organs.
Why?
Well,
Why?
okay.
You're dead.
Well,
Like,
this
you don't-
is what I'm asking, right? So is that immoral, right? So
Yes.
it's saying, hey, if you sign up for this, we're going to automatically put you into this thing. You have the option to get out, but you're automatically in it. Is that immoral? Like, is that
Yes.
Is that a bad thing to do?
Can you expand
Why
on that,
would- why
Spartacus?
is-
Why is
I
it
would say
immoral?
no.
Why
I
is
would
it
say
immoral?
no.
No, it's not.
I would
immoral.
say it's a bad thing to do because you are automatically sorry, my camera's off, my bad. You are automatically assumed that you want to give up your organ. You are automatically assumed that you want to give up something that is you. And so like
But you're
it's
dead.
essentially
Yeah, you're
yes,
dead. You
I
don't
understand.
matter.
I understand. Give me 1 second. Give me 1 second. I understand
You
that,
know what I-
right? I understand. I understand that you are deceased, but when you are deceased, there's still such thing as property. Otherwise there would be no such
Wait,
thing
what?
as there's still such
Like
thing as
you-
property that you own when you die. Do you understand that?
I understand, but once you're dead, you no longer own it.
You do still
Right.
own it.
Yeah,
According to
true.
the
There's a
government, you
title of
still own.
Yeah, that's silly, but it's title transfer, right? So when you die, unless you've made your wishes known voluntarily of some other association, then your next of kin inherits your property, right? So that includes your body, right? So unless you voluntarily chosen to give up your body to someone else, the next of kin owns your body as a piece of property. Now, if you tell people adequately and you give them every level of informed kind of like decision making in terms of what to do with your organs when you die, then this program shouldn't really have that much of a difference. But Doobie makes a fair point, and I don't think it's immoral if you are making sure that literally every person is like, hey, just so you know, before you sign this, like if unless you check this box, your organs will do this, right? You would probably see a decrease because there are probably people not paying attention or whatever. But the behavioral nudging aspect of this is that some people don't want to cause a fuss, cause a scene, or whatever. So they the passive,
Or even
action-
just they give you a little dot in your license, right? And
well,
some
it's
people might
passive.
feel weird.
That's what it is some people are
Yeah,
just
some
really
people might feel
passive,
weird
so they
about,
just
like, not
won't
having that
do
dot on there.
anything because they don't care one way or the other. what it really amounts to is that it's not worth it for them to check the box because they don't actually care. They're passively like consenting to this.
It
And so
shouldn't-
like, yeah, is that immoral? It's only immoral if there are people that aren't aware that this has happened. And then there are additional barriers like where they got to go back to the DMV and sit, you know, and wait fucking 8 hours for someone to see them so that they can correct this issue. Then it becomes immoral. But if they're giving every opportunity, it's not really immoral. It's just the state wants to enforce this behavior, or they want this behavior. They want more organ donors. And so they realize that some people are passive and don't actually care, and they'll choose not to do anything. And if the default is giving your organs, then they'll passively do that. And if the default is not giving your organs, they'll passively do that as well.
So I actually think it should be different. I agree with the whole like you should be able to sell like your body to anybody like through your will, like the moment before your death or something along these lines. But
You should be able to do
like,
it while you're alive.
you'd be sure, but I think at that point, like there should be like an organ market. Like so, it wouldn't like really be donors. Like people would like get bodies and sell the organs to whoever needed them.
Yeah,
I think like,
no,
honestly,
I'd be okay with
because if you want to increase availability, that's how you do it.
yeah. I mean, you can give
Yeah.
it to charity if you want, but I mean, it's better to sell it, and it would mean that, you know, the people it would allocate
It'd
resources
pay for the
better than
funeral,
central
yeah.
planner.
Yeah, there are plenty of people who don't have money in savings, haven't made a lot of good decisions in their life, and so when they died, all they really have to leave their families are the whatever value
Organs,
is in
yes.
their body. Yeah. So yeah, I think that'd be fine.
There we go. We solved it.
I think that would be pretty interesting. I've talked
All through an
about
airline conversation.
selling organs. Yeah, I know. This was the natural progression of this conversation. I actually did want to send it back
Sell a
to
kidney, put a kid in college.
airlines, and I agreed with a lot of your points, even the people who are generally on the other side of me. I thought you guys had a lot of interesting points there. But specifically on this thing about letting airlines fail, that seemed odd to me. It seems to me that airlines, the reason why they get those subsidies, is that because they're critical infrastructure. Our economy is like tied up in people being able to be mobile, especially in a large ass country that we have here in the States, right? In Canada too, right? I mean, if you call it country.
Lactoid would, I'm sure.
Okay. But yeah, it's like getting from one side to the other and ignoring the middle as we should is important, and it drives a lot of business. So if they fail, right? I don't know how many like the airlines are in Canada, but if it was only Air Canada, just for argument's sake, and it failed, well then that would be an absolute catastrophe. So it seems to me that it would make
It'd be
sense
good.
to give them subsidies. And you mean like until another airline can get stood up, right? If
Well, it's like, well, how do they fail, right? Like, does a nuclear bomb blow up the airport? Like, all
That
of
would
these
be fun.
assets still exist, right? And so, if a business fails in a competitive market like an airline, right? Then what that really means is that one business allocated their resources properly, innovated properly, and one didn't. And the one that didn't still owns all these assets, so they fail. They sell all. So if Spirit fails because they're trying to cut corners and costs to such a degree that they're not profitable enough, let's say when when an economic downturn hits, like when they got bailed out by the Obama administration, right? So let's say that happens. Well, what ends up happening is that businesses that did save properly, that did innovate properly and were profitable, will buy up all of Spirit Airlines' airplanes. And if there's, let's say there's less, right? Let's say for whatever reason, everybody is hurt in such a degree and they have to build back up. Well, this is an opportunity for investors, right? You don't need the government to come in. This is an opportunity to go, hey, business, you're critical infrastructure, and, we're going to need planes in like 3 or 4 months. But right now, because of the economic downturn, you're not doing too well. I'll be willing to give you a loan right now, and other people are able to make money. There's plenty of ways this can go. The problem is that when you give money to a quote critical infrastructure so that they don't fail, what ends up happening is they don't innovate because they're not dependent upon the possibility of failure to be able to make new decisions to make things better. Right. So, for example, they'll keep these big ass planes in the air that use too much gas, Corey, too much fuel, and
Yeah,
they'll
I
have
don't think they
half
run
the
on
seats
gas.
full. right? Well, yeah, fair enough. But they have too much. Half the seats are full, and the other half aren't. A big part of being profitable in the airline industry is making sure that you don't have too many flights, or that you have like all of the seats full. This would require innovation in that. Or it just so might be that maybe one of the major reasons why we don't have high-speed railway in America is because when fucking COVID hits, all of a sudden the airline industry needs $54 billion in taxpayer money. I don't know. Maybe that's a reason that we don't have high-speed rails between, like, let's say DC and New York.
No, that's not
Maybe
the
other
reason.
forms. Well, I'm just saying it certainly has an effect when the government is picking winners and losers, and other people don't get those same kind of like subsidies and that same level of like wealth in order to invest in other forms of transportation.
To be clear, Republican governors actually did get in the way. They had the plan to do that like Excel line up and down the Eastern Corridor, and like it was all in place. The funding was there. And then Republican
So-
governors, I think it was Chris Christie. Don't quote me on that one. I think it was one of them, and then someone maybe on Virginia. I think I don't know. But like Republican governors got in the way, and they like killed this plan. And we
So-
would have had faster travel. Just putting that out there.
I do.
Who knows? Yeah, I don't know.
So I do want to fact check here. That a bus and a plane carrying the same amount of passengers. So according to umatter.world, so it's 68 grams of carbon emission per passenger per kilometer for a bus, and it's 285 grams per passenger per kilometer for a plane. Now when you take a look at that and put it into the actual calculations, like I did with the bus ride and the plane ride, you're looking at 1,140 grams of carbon emissions for the plane to get from place to place per passenger, and for the bus you're looking at 4,760 grams of carbon emissions for the bus to get there. So it is more.
There's way too much
It
math
is
going on
more.
here.
It is more economically
Wait,
efficient,
Sprout.
as otherwise stated. It is more economically efficient to drive to fly to the place you're trying to get to rather than take a bus.
No, hold on. You said for the plane it's 70 something per
It's
kilometer.
68 grams per 68
Per
grams of carbon
kilometer.
emissions
Or-
per kilometer
and then
for the
per
bus.
passenger per kilometer for a bus.
And then so what about and then planes-
285 grams of 285 grams of carbon emissions per passenger per kilometer for a plane.
So it's wait a minute. So if that's the case, then it's always more carbon intensive to fly.
It seems that way. Carbon intensive. So it does seem that way, but when you take a look at kilometers, and you take a look at the way the bus would have to go in order for the bus ride to actually arrive at the same place you're going to, versus a plane taking a straight path, it is not more carbon. It is not more efficient to ride in the
your
bus. It is
argument
more
is that
efficient
there
to
are
fly
more
the plane.
kilometers. A bus has to travel more kilometers to get to the same location.
Okay.
Yes.
Theoretically, I
That's
can
the
see
argument.
the
Okay.
argument now. Okay. Because I was very confused for a second.
No, you're good.
Mhm.
Yeah, thank you to the experts at umatter.world.
Yep, that's where I got it from.
Yeah, wonderful.
And also to address the point that you made, Prime, in terms of like maybe I don't actually know. No, I think there's more than one airline in Canada besides Air Canada. I think there's at least two. We have Virgin Canada or something to that effect, and other miscellaneous Canadian airlines. But like, yeah, I take your point that if it's critical to infrastructure, like say for example, like I see no reason, I could be wrong, but I see no reason why, like, if it's critical to like something like Canada Post, you can just like have planes as part of like Canada Post if it requires just like shipping or whatever, getting things across the country. Where like I don't currently see a reason why it has to be like a necessity or like a human right to travel by plane.
To Scott, and to anyone else who wants to jump in on the conversation, it's fine. So I guess I would agree on your discussion about too big to fail, right? I don't like having any institutions out there, companies, firms that are too big to fail. That's an issue. In fact,
Right.
I would love to have. I mean, there's been a lot of consolidation within the airline space, right? I'd love to have have that broken up, have a lot more options for the consumer. But it would seem to me that because I've heard airline executives talk about the airline industry, and they're like, the margins are razor thin. Like the only thing that is constant in airlines is like them failing, right? Like eventually there's going to be a crash. They said like it's not a good investment to invest in the airlines because of how volatile it is and how thin the margins are. So in that situation, for this type of industry, it would seem that it would be difficult to gather investors, right, to bail out those organizations. Not the one that's being like irresponsible, but just the nature of the business. It seems to me is not one where most investors want.
So let me explain like why this is not quite right. So
Okay.
let's imagine, right? Let's imagine we have 10 airline companies operating in the United States, right? And then there's some form of like another economic recession hits, right? Some big like like a housing market bubble or something, right? And so travel goes way down, and because of their razor thin margins, everybody's doing poorly. Well, see, what I'm not saying all 10 of these companies gather investors. What I'm saying is that 2 of these companies out of the 10 are really good, and 8 of these companies are not so good, right? 2 of these have shown that they do better on their margins, that they innovate better, that they're simply and that they're bigger. And so what ends up happening is all of them are in danger of failing. But the investors go to them and go, "You're the ones that are still going to be here when it's all over, and you're going to be the ones that gobble up a larger portion of the market share. And so you're the ones, because you're the better company, that stands to profit when 4 or 5 of these other businesses fail, because people are still going to fly." Okay. And so the investment isn't the airline industry is like a non-volatile industry. It's recognizing that there are some companies that proved that they were better, that they're going to get a larger portion of the market share once people return to flying, if they can make it through this downturn. And so you take the risk in that, thinking, okay, this is one of the better companies that's going to gobble up one of these smaller companies because they're not going to be able to get the investments.
But wouldn't that also have be a problem for the market innovation you talked about? And that now in your example, let's pretend there's only 2 left, or maybe a bit more than 2, like maybe like 2 that did really well, and the other ones that barely survived, right? So like let's say there's 4 in the market, right? Just for simplicity.
Right. Boom and bust economy. You had a diverse market of competitors. Now you only have like 2 major competitors.
Yeah.
Right. So we've seen this multiple times with like Standard Oil. We've seen this when Germany tried to go after Carnegie, and Carnegie bought up all the chemicals and then eventually told the German government to go fuck themselves and resold it. Right. We see this happen, right, where monopsonies on the market form. But when you have a monopsony on the market, that means you have a less diversified company, right? You have kind of standardized practices in order to deal with economies of scale. And so what this actually does is this creates a market void, because you would say, oh, well, shouldn't there be less competition? Well, because there's less competition now, you've opened up new companies to come in, see what those 8 companies did that was bad, and be able to come up with a new company.
See, but the problem is that like, and I take your point that infrastructure doesn't go away. Like, the planes don't just like explode the moment like Delta goes under, right? So that would kind of be pretty rad. But that doesn't happen. But still, despite that, like the barriers of entry of getting into this industry are extremely high, right?
You know what? I'll give you a real world example. With airlines and show you how this could work. So 2 companies exist now, right? As opposed to the 10 that did exist. And it's really fucking expensive to build an airline. Well, see, there's another product that's starting to occur right now that's just like Uber, where super wealthy people that own private jets, but like don't use their private jets that often, and it's really kind of expensive to maintain, have been renting out their private jets to like wealthy people, but not Uber, not like the top 1%, right? The top, right, millionaires, but like not like, fucking hedge fund managers, right? Now these people can pay like $1,000 to $2,000 a month where they are, and it's like owning a timeshare on a private jet. So let's say there are 2 companies that exist, and because they have less competition, they start being shittier, their service isn't as good, etc. This opens up the market to an innovative new idea, which is that more super wealthy people are like, fuck these two airlines. More people buy private jets. And because more people have private jets, the innovation is lowering the cost for the wealthy to use an Uber service to just rent private jets. And now an entirely new industry is formed that is better and more efficient for a certain sector of the economy because of this creative destruction that occurred because we got the fuck out of the way.
And I hear you, Scott, on that. Like that, the example as you laid out, I think is an interesting one. But it was going to be like, it's, again, like being really like industry specific. The reasons why that it's so the margins. One of the reasons why the margins are so small is because people want to pay cheaper and cheaper flights, right? As an investor looking at this market segment, sure, you can easily say, well, millionaires, right? There's an opportunity there, but for everyone else, it seems like they're most likely going to be left behind, and because of that, right, to avoid that such a situation, you would have government step in and assist to make sure these companies don't go down, right? Yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, I get
but
that.
the thing is, though,
you
it
keep
gets
doing
cheaper.
research, you
It
keep
gets
doing
cheaper,
studies,
though.
you keep doing taxes to try and figure out how to solve this problem instead of just allowing the market to solve these issues. The interesting and unique thing about airlines and first class tickets is the very fact that you can't fill a plane economically with only first class flights. It doesn't fucking work. Now, Korean Air can do this sometimes because there's a lot of business travel with a lot of wealthy people.
Or that
But for
Dubai
most
one.
people, right, exactly. Like, but most airlines, they have 6 or 7 or 8 or 10 people in first class. And if they only had first class flights, they'd fail. And so they use those to subsidize the poor and cheaper flights. So I kind of see what you're saying. I would still argue the economic calculation problem is less efficient than the market, but airlines specifically, I don't think has this unique problem because they actually need the poor to subsidize the wealthy, and they need the wealthy to subsidize the poor in order to be successful.
Interesting. Okay, fair enough. Does anyone else have anything else to say on this? Okay,
Just
all
think
right.
go to get cheaper. You've seen this with internet, you've seen this with phones, you've seen this with computers. That over time it becomes more and more accessible to
I'm gonna get water.
gain access to these things. So example for computers, back when computers first came out, computers were only for businesses. If you had one in your house, you were like ultra rich, and like having a computer in your house was just unthinkable. Now it's unthinkable that someone doesn't have a computer in their house of some sort. Again, phones, car phones were unthinkable. Like you had to be super rich to get a car phone and to be able to talk on a phone outside of your house. Nowadays, we all have phones that we carry in our pockets, so they don't need to be put in our car. And this is not seen as a luxury. And so the idea that like in the beginning, a luxury is going to be much higher priced and only for a certain percentage of the population, yes. But when it comes down to it, it's going to get cheaper over time, and it's going to become more accessible over time.
Well, this has already happened with
But I
airlines.
think isn't that the
This has
concern
already
though?
happened
Isn't
with
that the
airlines.
concern that Corey would have is that hey, yes, this is true, but we're also dealing with a climate crisis, right? And these airlines being more accessible and more people taking planes is going to add to that climate crisis.
Well,
So
it's
given
cheaper.
that's the case,
It's
we should
it's
actually be pushing less people to do this.
it's better than riding in a bus.
So the
And-
problem,
Well,
the
maybe they don't
problem
need
with
to ride
that
in a bus
actually,
either.
the problem with that actually is that it's not fully true. So there's this thing in economics called cost disease, and then there's a theory called cost disease socialism. So what cost disease is that certain portions, certain sectors of the economy, like you described, Sprouticus, the value of labor begins to increase, right? Which is to say you're able to produce more widgets, you're able to do things cheaper, et cetera. So a factory worker, the amount of work that they put in for, let's say, technology of some sort, right? Their labor goes up. But the problem is that some forms of labor, the value of their labor doesn't go up. So like a teacher, for example, you can only fit so many seats in a classroom and educate so many people, but where other sectors of the economy, the value goes up and up and up and up, like the production of TVs, but it doesn't necessarily happen in another thing. And what ends up entering is what's known as cost disease socialism, which is because the value of some labor goes up and up and up, the amount of money that you can make in those industries as a laborer goes up and up and up and up, but the less valuable labor doesn't go up because your labor is not as valued. And so what they demand is redistribution from sectors of the economy where like automation is kicking in and things like that, where the value of labor keeps going up. They demand more welfare. They demand that they get paid more. They demand these things, but the value of their labor isn't increasing. And so I think what you're seeing, especially within the airline industry, is that there's so many airline workers where the value of their labor really isn't increasing. I think we saw this with like the union fights against Reagan in the original kind of like busting up of the unions, is that their labor isn't becoming more valuable because there is no innovation. And we keep stepping in with socialist policies to try and save a labor market that isn't performing as well as other sectors of the economy, instead of allowing those jobs to go away like they should and other forms of innovation to come in to reduce the amount of labor that is necessary in those things. We keep wanting to redistribute the wealth, but what that does is that disincentivizes the increased productivity in labor in other areas, which disincentivizes the growth of our economy. Like we're holding ourselves back, trying to save jobs and save an industry that's being outperformed by other industries.
Like video game voice actors as well, right? Like their values either staying the same or going down, but we give like more and more money.
Okay, so the problem when it comes to airlines with this, though, Fabian, is they perform a not a unique function. Unique is not the word I'm looking for because you can transport things through other means. But
use PrimeCayes' term, critical infrastructure.
Yeah, they are a critical infrastructure, and if we allowed them to just fail, especially in the state we are now in, like in today, presently, if tomorrow we had another pandemic or a crisis of some sort, like 9/11, God forbid, which created a huge strain on the profitability of these airlines, it would cause devastation to our economy that I don't think we could recover from in any kind of short-term or even mid-term kind of deal. And I think that it's okay for governments to step in and subsidize critical infrastructure to keep people from mass amounts of suffering. And that's what would come from the dissolution of airplanes.
I understand like the empathy that's laden in your argument, right? But during this last lockdown, we gave the airlines $54 billion. And so my question is how many times can we give a failing to achieve sector of the economy that fails to innovate $54 billion before the amount of wealth that you've stolen from me out of my pocket and out of my paycheck, I could have kept and utilized in new industries, new innovations, new forms of transportation, or just used to make my life better so that I'm not suffering, so that we can maintain this shit business model. How many times can we do that?
Well, as many as we need, I think, right?
That's the issue.
As many as we need, because a lot of the times when we do subsidize it, are after events that are largely outside of the airline's control, such as 9/11, such as the pandemic, it put an excess strain on, again, parts of our critical infrastructure. Because if, again, this money that you say that we could use towards other things, those other things that we would invest in all are tied to and require the ability to mass transport people and goods that airlines currently
commercial airlines are doing fine in terms of profitability, just to be fair. We're really talking about businessmen being able to make business trips that keeps our economy afloat, in order to do things. And see, here's the thing is if we allowed those industries to fail, maybe we would end the culture of this idea that all of these business deals need to be done with a shake of a hand in person, and we'd have more people using things like Zoom or Discord or whatever to get a lot of business dealings done. Maybe there's a culture that is supporting this because they're stealing money from me to prop up a business that isn't doing well. Maybe, just maybe, some of that shit doesn't need to be done, but we're not able to actually see that in the market economy because we keep funneling fucking taxpayer dollars into it.
So there's a lot of maybes.
I gotta say, that is one of the most base things you've ever said. Okay, there's nothing I hate more as a business owner than one of these fucking dinosaurs that comes around that needs me to go out to his fucking office and sit with him to sign a fucking policy. Like I only do this for the really big ones, right? If it's fucking worth my fucking time. I hate it. I don't need to see you in person to sign this fucking piece of paper. I can explain it to you over the phone. Stop being a fucking idiot. Drives me nuts. I hate it so much.
And to address sort of your point, Spartacus, or what you brought up earlier, of like costs being driven down for, let's say, for example, computers, smartphones, etc., etc. I don't know that, and I'm sure there'll be arguments made as to why this hasn't occurred in. I don't think this has occurred in American healthcare, as in it seems like the costs are only going up and up. But some might argue that that's the result of like too much regulation and not enough.
They're not driven. Yeah, no, they're not driven by innovation. Same thing with colleges. The colleges aren't driven by innovation. They're guaranteed that paycheck because the government guarantees that loan, which means the college is getting paid whether or not the student can pay for it.
Yeah, and that's fair. But again, to your point of like decreasing the cost of certain goods, where like yes, a computer today is more or less a necessity rather than a luxury 20 years ago. And I'm totally open to the conversation of like, okay, we are at the place where a smartphone is pretty much like essential for most people's like daily functioning in Western society. And so like but do I think that, everyone should be provided with, whatever, a Galaxy Fold? No, but I think there might be an argument to be made that like, oh, like maybe we should subsidize if someone truly doesn't have access to a smartphone that's crucial for their daily functioning. They should be granted access, or it should not be cost prohibitive. I'm open to that conversation.
The Galaxy Fold is innovative, right?
Well, I mean,
so wait.
This is a cell phone I could have.
Are you getting ready to tell me that glass that folds is not innovative?
Cell phone I can have.
Folding glass is not innovative. Folding glass is not innovative. You're telling me it's not innovative.
Doobie, you're gonna lose.
What's the point?
No.
Doobie, this is the coolest thing I've ever owned in my fucking
recognize
life. Do not take this
like,
away from me. Do not take this away from me.
This is just like
had a flip phone. It's like just fucking. What are you doing?
This is just status games. That's all.
But what I'm saying is,
explain why it's
glass that folds is. You saying that glass that folds is not innovative?
No, I would agree that folding glass has potential other applications that are innovative. But currently, as far as I can tell right now, for a cell phone, for like the Galaxy Fold that Lactoid loves propping up and showing off, I don't know that there's much utility.
There you go, Galaxy Fold. There you go, the glass folds. So, but I'm just surprised. I'm just surprised that you're willing to say that folding glass on a cell phone is not innovative. It certainly is innovative. Samsung was the first company to come out. Sorry, Samsung was the first company to come out with this. It certainly is innovative in the game, and I'm sure at some point in the future that folding glass is going to be used as something else. And they're going to be able to utilize that technology and utilize that innovation, which it is innovative, on something else.
He agrees. Hold on.
I know he agrees with that, but he's saying it's only innovative because they're going to use it on something else.
I just want to let Lactoid get his point.
Sure. So it's not just that this folding glass miracle is going to be used for other things. It makes sense with a phone. First of all, you can fold it in half, so it's very pocketable and convenient. It just disappears in your pocket, no problem whatsoever.
Pocket.
So
why are your pockets so fucking
so you can
shallow?
Say, sure, I know I have very deep pockets.
We need pocket innovation.
No, I have very deep pockets. I just carry many things with me, because I'm a forgetful person and I need to have everything on me. So, and this is like a lifesaver for that. And because I have all these things in my pockets, I was used in the past to my my screen getting all scratched up. Not a problem now because the screen is folded in of itself and the screen doesn't get scratched up. How sick is that? So
get
sick.
a screen protector.
You're jealous. I know you can afford one. I don't know why
you're in the same
like,
pocket as your keys.
Growing a fit, like you own a business. Like
no,
you should be able to afford this.
It just doesn't make any sense. Okay?
I got it for free.
Just carry a purse, Lactoid. Problem solved.
No, my masculinity, I can't.
To make sure my screen doesn't get scratched, I position it basically. So it goes into my pocket first, and then I put my wallet right on own it. and I don't put my keys in that pocket. The keys go in the other pocket. Anything I would scratch, it doesn't.
There
go
you
in
go.
this pocket.
Planning ahead, easy.
No, and one less convenience I got to remember. Like, I got to put the wallet in the right order. Oh, the wrong order. Now I scratch my fucking $800 phone. No, fuck that bullshit. This is the coolest thing ever.
I understand that's a complicated.
Also, when you're wearing sweatpants, right? Because girls like seeing guys in gray sweatpants. So when you're wearing sweatpants, right, your phone slips out of your pocket. Unless you have like abnormously deep pockets to where you can go elbow deep into your fucking pocket, okay? Your phone slips out of your pocket.
Or pocket zippers. I have pocket zippers in these sweatpants.
Truly innovative.
Girls are not into pocket zippers, okay?
Also, not only
not into pocket zippers.
Not only is it better, just in terms of like the actual technology, but like the other part is like, why do people buy gold jewelry? Why do people buy fancy cars? Like part of this was I want to show off to my friends. And I'm going to be honest. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that, right? It is a beautiful thing. Like,
look,
it reminds me of my Game Boy SP when I was a kid. So every time I open it to play it like Pokemon, I'm just like fucking 11 again, and it's beautiful, and it gives me like a reason to live. I'll be honest. So the fact that you're taking it away from me is like very
exactly. This brings me back to like my original point. Like you can value the wrong things, and if you are valuing like, oh, I got to show off to my friends my cool phone, and you're engaging these types of status games, like
jealous.
I would say
you're jealous.
You're probably engaging with the wrong values.
No, hold on.
Isn't it kind of funny that like the one person who also has the phone is the only one not criticizing me for having it? I don't know. It sounds like
you're both NPCs. Okay, that's what's going on. You should have got a fair phone. Okay.
Sure, a fair phone. Yeah,
get a fair phone.
I'm pretty sure fair phones.
Children
I'm
with your fucking phones. Okay?
I'm pretty sure fair phones are not available in the United States. I looked that up the last time you said it, and they're not available in the United States.
Yeah.
And it doesn't fold either. So I mean, what the fuck would you mess with it?
I've explained it. I've explained it multiple times that like if you can get one mailed to you, that you can have it on T-Mobile. That they use the same frequencies. Every time I bring it up, I wasn't going to bring it up. I was just going to keep it in the background.
Yes, but you can't order it from Amazon. You have to find someone in Europe to buy it for you, and then to get it mailed to you. You can't order it.
Yeah, you got to talk to a European. That's just too much.
I don't know what to tell you, but like some people have friends. I don't know.
I don't talk to Europeans. Okay, they're second class. They're second class. And you know, I just don't.
Every day, your politics is matching fucking European politics more and more. So you might as well find some.
And Spartacus, to what you brought up earlier in terms of like Samsung was the first. Samsung was the first. I'm not even sure if it was first, but yes, they brought it to the phone quickly. But the science and the technology of folding glass did not originate with Samsung. That's like fundamental academic research. That is largely like chemistry-based research funded through public money.
So where did folding glass first become productized? Where did it become not a theory and put practically?
In terms of consumer, I can't say when it became a consumer product or implemented a consumer product. I'm just saying the research that generated that consumer product didn't take place at Samsung.
Sure, it didn't, but it got put into practicality by Samsung.
Probably publicly funded. Okay, so let's move forward. Really interesting. DB, just one quick question. Those dinosaurs you were talking about previously, when you go to the office, right? Is it like smoke filled? Do they offer you a whiskey in the daytime? About like
okay. So the kind of people I'm talking about are the people that own like billion-dollar fucking HOAs, right? Like huge fucking like complexes. Like I'll meet them if they have like $2 million of premium for me to insure, right? And I need to be there to make the deal. So these people are typically like, they will have like a drawer just full of fucking Jack Daniels and the cigars and the very old money type people, right? I fucking hate them. They're dinosaurs. They'll give you the little spiel about how they, their family founded the business and yada yada yada. And they just old fashioned. They believe in the handshake more than the piece. But they don't even need to sign the paper after they shake your hand. That should be enough. I fucking hate it. Like, it's so irritating.
Do they or do they not have a
So look,
secretary that they
the
call?
What I'm
simple-
hearing,
Exactly.
what I'm
Yeah.
hearing-
One of the
That's what I wanna know.
one of the best like pleasures of my job is getting the call that like the dude died and his son's taken over. Okay, like,
Wow.
That's
Okay.
that's what I'm looking forward to.
But all I'm hearing from that is that we need to keep these airlines afloat to further annoy Doobie. Like this is something that we can all get behind, right? Like it'll bring the sides
No.
together.
Okay.
Okay.
Thanks so much. That was really interesting though. I didn't know that about your job. That sounds annoying, but interesting.
Yeah, I used to do it for all of them, right? Because there are a lot of smaller businesses that do this too. But these days, only the really big accounts that I need to be involved in.
Yeah. Oh, then very quickly, do you if a business wants to do that, do you send your underlings to do it? Is that
I don't even talk to most of my clients anymore. I only get involved with like a policy if it's something really big that I need to like have my hands on.
Yeah, but
Beyond
like,
that, I have other people handle.
yeah, but I'm just saying like, or is it like a company policy? Like, no, we don't do this, right? Like, or
They can do it if they want to.
if they want to.
And so
All right.
yeah, so I have like employees, but I also have like a lot of like independent contractors. So they make their own hours. They want to go out and meet somebody, go for it, right? Like they whatever. So yeah, that's fun. And
Even though that costs you money, because
if you're doing insurance and you're in sales, you kind of need to do that if you want to like get those bigger accounts at the start.
All right, so let's get on to the next topic.